All right. So let's get started. We're going to talk about how to explore your unconscious and really get into your personal unconscious and the collective unconscious. We'll do a little overview of the unconscious. We'll talk about its powers, its dangers, the archetypes, like a whirlwind tour. And then I'll talk about how I, for years, explored the unconscious. Okay, how I went into the unconscious, the exact method I used to go into the unconscious. And yes, the slides will be shared. They'll be part of the upload. And again, for people who just came in, it'll be at dillonfree.com/recordings. Okay. So I always love this quote from Jung. And I think when you actually do real unconscious work, and I should say here, we're doing real unconscious work. This isn't like pop psychology. This is actually going into the unconscious. Okay. I have nothing against pop psychology. I have nothing against shadow work. All that's very good. But this is the real thing. We're going to talk about, and I think you'll see at the end how deep we get into the unconscious. But Jung said, those who do succeed in exploring their unconscious can hardly fail to be impressed by all that the ego does not know, all that your conscious mind does not know. When you go into the unconscious, it is absolutely startling what you find there, what you find out about yourself and what you find out about human nature. You find that you have, you might even say, certain powers that you didn't think you have, certain powers of recognition, certain powers of intuition, a certain ability to maybe prognosticate, to anticipate what's going to happen. Right? So when you go into the unconscious, you really start to see that you have this very powerful aspect of your mind. It's fun to go into. So what is the unconscious? What are we talking about when we talk about the unconscious? We know it's the hidden part of our mind. It's the stuff that's beneath our awareness. It can contain instincts, repressed memories. It's the home of symbols and forgotten emotions. If you've been to the workshops on this, is the letting go workshop, is the typical, or the name of the group. And we typically go into repressed emotion. So an aspect of the unconscious that we go into is the emotional element. And I'll say at the beginning, when you're dealing with the unconscious, you're actually dealing in large part with repressed emotion, with emotion. When we talk about the archetypes, they're usually very emotional in nature. They have a lot of emotional energy. Even if the stories arise with the unconscious, even if narratives arise, if images arise in the unconscious, we're still mainly dealing with emotions. And it may not seem that way. It may not seem that way that you're dealing with emotions, but you really are. So why would we explore it? Because it's running you. It's also potentially ruining you. Right? The unconscious can ruin you. It ruins relationships. It ruins society. It ruins nations. It ruins groups of people. People who become violent, people who become angry at the drop of a hat, people who are irrational. This is all in the unconscious. This is all an unconscious takeover. The more benefits of going into the unconscious are you break unhealthy patterns, you uncover true motivations, you can heal old wounds, your relationships will improve, you're going to have more energy. Why would you have more energy? Well, as you go through these emotions in the unconscious, you're not distracted by them as much, right? You're not having to use as much energy to push them out. You're not constantly having to deal with the anger you might have, or the sadness you might have, or anxiety. So energy goes through the roof as you go into the unconscious. You start to integrate different parts of yourself. You may have spiritual insights. Jung said he loved the unconscious because it could see around corners. That's what I was talking about earlier when I said you can anticipate what's going to happen in your life, in your personal life, and even, you might even say geopolitically, or what's happening in your town or your country, your state, your nation, at your workplace. You start to detect patterns, subtle patterns in the world, and are able to guess, you might say, in some cases know what's going to happen or what's going to transpire, how things are going to unfold. It's like a great chess player can look at a chessboard and he or she knows the game's over 10 moves before it's over, because you can see where the pieces are going to go. You can see the probability of where the pieces are going to be moved. So you start to have this insight, an uncanny insight into the world. You also have more compassion when you go into the unconscious, because in the unconscious, that people who are run by it are at the mercy of it. And if you don't know how to deal with the unconscious, then, and most of us grew up, we didn't know how to deal with it. We have these mood fluctuations, we have these outbursts. We start to see that's all the unconscious. So you have compassion for people who lose their temper with you. You have more compassion for people who like suddenly get in a bad mood, Debbie Downers, because you recognize that the unconscious is active in them. Okay. With that said, you also develop wisdom, and you might say discernment. Discernment is the idea that you're able to negotiate between good and evil. You're able to see good and evil. And when you see evil, which you know is just really unconscious possession, but we have to label it evil because it can impact innocence, it can ruin systems, you're wise enough to still do what has to be done to contain evil, to fight evil. That could mean, in some cases, going to war. That could mean more police. There's different ways you deal with evil. It could be a talking down. It could be more laws, right? So you're not the new agey, my heart's filled with compassion, so much compassion. I let my ex-boyfriend from 25 years ago come back after he gets out of jail for triple homicide, right? Like, you're loving, you care about him, but you don't let him back in your life because you know that he is still possessed by the unconscious. You know that he's still dangerous because you know the unconscious can be dangerous. You respect it, and you do what you have to do to quote unquote evil people, not out of hatred, but out of wisdom, right? So you get a lot of people who get utopian ideals in their personal life and politically. And these utopian ideals tend to lead the world to hell. The road to hell is paved with good intentions. We've all heard that phrase, and that's unconscious possession of compassion. It's too much compassion, which is we'll talk about the anima and the animus and how too much compassion can be just as deadly as too much viciousness, actually. You'll find in the unconscious the archetypes that we spoke of, or that we will speak of: the shadow, the child, the sage, the trickster, the anima, the animus. And it's important to know these aren't fiction. These are real. They're psychologically real, and they almost have, not almost, they do have their own autonomy. It's like they're moving of their own within you. They have their own little lives in your unconscious mind. They're going to emerge in dreams and drawings and synchronicities. You can start to sense which archetype is there by moods that you have or moods that appear. And what's crazy is they know more than you do. They know more than you can possibly imagine. They're insightful in ways that your conscious mind isn't. And that's what will always kind of trigger you if you haven't explored the unconscious. It just blows your mind that they can know the things that they know. Let me just mute somebody here. So they will give you insights into the nature of reality, the nature of your life. Do you need a guide to go into the unconscious? Yes. For the type of work we're talking about here, this is very intense unconscious work. If you just do surface level unconscious work, shadow work, I don't think you need a guide. But if you do real unconscious work, you need a guide, or at least somebody to lay out, as we're going to lay out here, what will come up, what you'll experience in the unconscious. Because what you'll experience in the unconscious might make you think you're going crazy. And that's why we have to be prepared for that. Jung, when he was going into the unconscious, he said that he had to do two things to keep his sanity as he went and explored these archetypes. He said, one, I had to use certain yoga breathing techniques. So he's using yoga to stay centered. And two, he had to be close to his family, and his family knew what he was doing. So he'd go into these intense sessions in the unconscious, and then he'd come out and have to reconnect to the world, back to the conscious world, back to the world of objects, the material world. So if you go really deep into the unconscious, you're going to find some pretty gnarly stuff. And at first, the error you make is you think, I'm thinking these crazy thoughts, I'm having these crazy emotions, these crazy experiences in the unconscious. And the fear is that's going to overtake you, or that's who you really are. When in actuality, it's just the elements of the unconscious and how the unconscious behaves. The unconscious is very extreme. When you get cut off in traffic, the conscious mind, with all of it's taken in, it's imbibed all the morals and standards of civilization. So it might flip a finger or something, but the unconscious, what it wants to do is run the person off the road. Somebody says a snide remark to you, your prefrontal cortex kicks in, you try to reframe it, maybe you snap a little bit, you're trying to be a civilized, decent human being. The unconscious, its solution to all of that is to destroy, quite frankly. It's to wipe the problem off the face of the earth. And when you find that in the unconscious, you go, oh my God, I'm crazy, I'm insane. That's why you need somebody. Virgil went with Dante through the Inferno, through hell. You need a Virgilian guide with you. Why am I qualified to talk about the unconscious? I have a degree in psychology and one in neuroscience, where I do look at unconscious behavior and unconscious emotion along with consciousness and the sense of self. when you go into the unconscious, you find that not only is it extreme, but there's a lot there. So for years, I went each day into the unconscious. I spoke to the archetypes. I had confrontations with certain archetypes. I had confrontations with certain ideas, certain collective emotions. And I'm going to show you exactly what I did and how I do it and how I still do it from time to time. I don't go into the unconscious every day anymore, simply because the unconscious has a teleological purpose. And that simply means it has an end, it has a goal in mind. And as you go into the unconscious, you're taken on a journey. Everybody's journey is slightly different, but it's moving towards what Jung called individuation, which is this integration of the self. And if you follow the unconscious path long enough, you do reach a sort of termination point. At least that was my experience. So I don't do this work as much anymore, though I still sometimes dip into the unconscious because there's still a lot there if you want to explore it. There's different, it can give you a new take, a new spin on a current life event or a current problem you're having, even if you've done the journey. But it is work. I should mention that. Like, you need to do it every day, or at least every other day, and you need to keep notes. We'll talk about that, how to keep record of it, because the unconscious starts to talk. The unconscious elements start to talk to each other. A dream you had 5 days ago relates to a vision you had today. Okay, and you need to keep all of that information and go over it and see how it's integrating and get the dreams, get the visions talking to each other. The conversations you have with the archetypes, you'll start to find these really cool threads. Just very briefly about me, I have a BA in psychology, as I mentioned, an MS in cognitive neuroscience. I have an MA in liberal arts. I'm actually completing both of those degrees now. All my coursework's done. I'm just doing the research, and I'm going for my PhD, hopefully not this fall, next fall. I teach neuroscience in college. It's actually part of the psychology department. It's called Mind, Brain, and Behavior. I've made a lot of programs. I've started a lot of businesses. So that's about it. Some warnings before beginning. Working on the unconscious takes years. Yeah, sorry, it's not like a fast thing. It won't happen overnight, but you do make fast progress. Getting to the end, like I talked about, it's not going to happen right away, but it's so much fun. You almost don't want it to end. And what's really cool is as you get to the end of it, it's really beautiful. You start to sense it. You get these incredible insights, and a lot of the things Jung talked about start to show up. You start to get the imagery he had. And I'll mention again later, but you should always expose yourself to unconscious work, to Jung's work, but don't do it too much. The reason I say don't do it too much is so when you're in the unconscious and you go through it, you start to record it. And then what you record, the visuals you have, the visions you see, the conversations you have, you later on find it in Jung. This will help verify that what Jung talked about actually exists in your unconscious, and you're not finding it in your unconscious because you were exposed to Jung. You didn't read about the anima, and then, because you read about the anima, you find the anima, right? You go into the unconscious, you find the anima, and then you read about Jung. So I think you should expose yourself to Jung and people who work in Jungian thought in the unconscious, but don't go too deep, at least not at first, until you prove to yourself that the archetypes they speak of actually exist within you. You will meet these beings. When we say archetypes, right, we think of them as just mental content, but actually they have a life of their own. They exist autonomously. I'll tell you very briefly, one of the first visions I ever had, it was actually before I started doing unconscious work. It was like a thing I was doing, but I had this dream that there was a World War I plane crash, and there was this plane in the ocean. This is an AD rendering of it. It's not exactly how I saw it in my mind, but it's close enough. And I still remember it. I was somehow in the water too, and I'm looking out over the water, and standing on the wing, this gray wing of a crashed airplane. It was a bright blue day, not like the clouds in this image, but there was this man covered with seaweed. There was a man made of seaweed. And this seaweed being, looked directly at me. The same way if you were in this room and you looked directly at me, and I knew you were conscious. This being had a consciousness to it almost. Like, it had its own life. It was autonomous. Anyway, I had never heard of the green man in Jungian thought. But that's what it was. So that's what I mean by don't read too much of it. So you'll be surprised. I had no idea the green man existed as an archetype, but it stuck with me. Where did the unconscious come from? Why do we have an unconscious? Why does it exist? Well, the unconscious didn't come like fully formed, but it emerged alongside human consciousness, and it became vital for survival. All the threats that we encountered as a species out in the Serengeti and in the jungles and on the waters, all these things became abstracted over time. So you can think of the unconscious, and in the unconscious, if you ever buy a book of dream symbols, most of those, in my experience, are junk, because your dreams are going to take on their own unique, your own idiosyncratic interpretations. There are certain elements, however, that seem to be universal, and one of those is water. Water in any unconscious work seems to represent the unconscious, and you can understand why that would be. You're in a boat, you're swimming, and what could come up but a shark or a whale and grab you, right? So the unconscious are these things in our mind that appear in consciousness out of the blue as emotions, as stories, as words, as images. So water in the unconscious is almost always representative of the unconscious. And the depth of the water and the color of the water, and whether it's night and you're around the water, or day and around the water, or the waves rough or the waves smooth, it's saying something about the nature of the unconscious. But you can start to understand that early humans were having experiences of being attacked by something underwater, fear of going out over the water because you can't see what's coming. You can understand why the mind would make this an abstraction of the unconscious. But again, for the most part, beyond water and a few other elements, you always want to take the symbols in your dreams and your visions, and don't assume there's a book or something that's going to tell you what that symbol means. You can use it as a reference, maybe to help you understand a little bit, because sometimes it's going to align, but there will be times when it just won't align. A dream book, a book of dream symbols, in my experience, when I flip through them and I compare it to what I did when I was going deep into the unconscious, very often did not align, just to let you know. So these abstractions of the threats we faced in our early history as humans, again, become symbolic in our mind, and they're universal. A great example is a dragon. Dragon is a combination, didn't exist in reality, but it's a combination of the snake. A lot of humans died from snake bites. It's been postulated that the reason human beings can detect color, so many different colors, is because we had to get good at spotting snakes among the grass and leaves and in flowers, right? So it's a theory. It's not proven, but it's a theory as to why we have as humans have such good color vision to spot snakes. We had a lot of deaths from snakes coming up as humans. We had death from fire and heat exhaustion, right? Being stuck out in the elements or being burned to death, caught in a forest fire. And then there were predatory birds. There were things that could fall on you. A lot of people still die from coconuts falling on their heads. So you could see why a dragon comes together with some of these elements. It has fire. It looks like a snake. It's a lizard, poisonous, and it combines threats from the air, threats from above. It could also signify lightning or lightning strikes or so on and so forth. So you get these composites in the unconscious, and it's very interesting that throughout the world, everyone has dragons, right? And some people have said that means dragons must have actually existed. No, it means that the unconscious works the same in all humans in all places at all times, that we all abstracted this out, no matter where we were, into something like a dragon. It gives me confidence that the archetypes are real. You see this in The Hobbit and Smaug. It's a good example. I mentioned the powers of the unconscious, the ability to see around corners, to anticipate what's coming. It's an intuition, it's a gut level feeling. The unconscious knows before. The reason you do unconscious work is to take some of this information, some of this insight, and bring it up into consciousness. And again, we're going to talk about how to do that. Like I said earlier, it also deepens empathy and wisdom. Your heart chakra is open, but so is, if we're talking spiritual terminology, your third eye is also open. You have a lot of people with a big heart chakra, no third eye. Not a good combination. And people who do that, they want to let criminals out for 50 cents and keep letting them out 70 times in a row until they kill a bunch of people or something. It's too much heart chakra. You still have to have wisdom. It's that balance, it's the golden mean that Aristotle talked about. It starts to awaken in you as you explore the unconscious. One scary thing about current Jungians that I've noticed is there's a lot of heart chakra open without a lot of discernment. And it makes me wonder how much actual unconscious work some Jungians have done. It's a little problem I have with them. There can be some healing with healing in unconscious work, psychological healing, even physical healing. It's because you're no longer repressing. You're letting these emotions out. You're letting these archetypes out. You're letting them speak. You're starting to integrate them. And you also get energy, as I spoke about, and direction. It can give you a purpose in life, a way to move through life, or an indication of where to go in life. Jung said that when his biography, somebody said, what book should I read? Memories, Dreams, Reflections is where I would start. Personally, it's his autobiography. I know it's a weird one to start with, but I think it's a great intro to Jung, actually. But a point he makes in there is that when he's writing his autobiography, he had some help with it, but when he's writing his autobiography, he said, this isn't a typical autobiography with who I met, where I went. My autobiography is about my internal life, my internal journeys. I'll say an added benefit of unconscious work is you're never bored. You always have something to do. You can always go into the unconscious. They could throw you in a cave and you could do unconscious work. So you should never be bored when you can start to deal with the unconscious. You can find the real you, so to speak. You'll find what's fluff and what's the core of you. You start to develop a fearlessness of death, and you may even come to know God. There's a clip from Jung. I hope you all can hear this. Can somebody tell me if they can hear this in the chat?
And did you believe in...
Before I play it. Yes, you can hear. Okay, perfect. So this is a famous clip from Jung when he's asked if he believes in God. And if you do unconscious work, I think you'll have this experience as well, quite frankly.
God?
Oh, yes.
Do you now believe in God?
Now, difficult to answer. I know. I don't need to believe. I know.
So there's Jung himself talking about the power of the unconscious to have an insight into the nature of divinity. We need to talk about, and maybe we can do this in the Q&A, what Jung thought about God, what he believed about God. That's a little bit more of a tricky question. Still, great answer from Jung. What are the dangers of not doing unconscious work? This is what keeps me up at night now, is I see people not doing unconscious work, which is why I started the Letting Go workshop, this group, is to help people release emotions, which what we're doing here is we're doing like a Jungian interpretation of the unconscious, but something else you can simply do is let go of the emotions in the unconscious. If you don't want to get into this, all the symbolism and all of that, you can just go with the emotions. That's why I started the group and what I typically teach. But the dangers of not doing unconscious work is the shadow, the dark side takes you over. And if you're advanced, you can read Ion by Jung. And if any of you become really interested in Jung and Jungian thought, and you want to do maybe a walkthrough of Ion, we can do that. Ion essentially warned that Christianity focused too much on Christ in the sense of Christ being the light and the good, and not enough on the Antichrist, the shadow, the repressed. And he thought that Western civilization, he had some dreams before World War I and before World War II. I think he saw like blood coming over the mountains, over the Alps and whatever, and anticipating World War I and World War II. So the idea is, and you see this in some political movements, people who think they're extremely compassionate, that they're extremely loving, but you also know this viciousness to them. Right? So there's a lot of that in, you might say, the New Age movement, where there's a lot of love, but you also sense this undercurrent of maliciousness, right? It's the repressed dark side that comes out and takes possession. So when the unconscious isn't dealt with, it can take control much more easily. And one of the scary things is if you have a population that hasn't dealt with the unconscious, certain terrible ideas become contagious. And this isn't reserved for one side of the political spectrum or the other. There are examples of far right and far left, let's just call them almost demonic possessions. Demonic possession is really unconscious possession of the dark side, a rejected shadow. There are other aspects that can take over the psyche too. But you see it in moralistic attitudes. You see it when people become too fragile, too sensitive. You can see it when they cheer on maybe an assassination attempts, executions of certain CEOs of certain industries. You can see them cheering on riots or insurrections or whatever. In politics, it's called the horseshoe theory. The more you go extreme right, extreme left, they start to come together. The reason they come together is because they're both starting to represent the same unconscious archetypes. And they're a danger to society. They're a danger to democracy. They're a danger to all the freedoms that you're endowed with. So you have to fight them. And if you do unconscious work, you should become, in my estimation, somebody who's almost politically, I don't want to say centrist, because that's like you're splitting the difference between whatever the polls are at the moment. But you become someone who's found some core principles that you defend. I tend to call it a chorist, not a centrist, but a chorist. You're someone who's found like core principles that are partly found based on reason and logic, and also partly found based on work in the unconscious. And you also have a certain spiritual common sense that all people, because of the fact they have a soul, are granted certain rights. It's enshrined fairly well in the US Constitution. Obviously, the US Constitution didn't always live up to that. But when you do unconscious work, you become someone who believes in defending those things, right? And fighting, you start to fight on all sides. You fight the far left, you fight theologians above you, right? You fight populists below you. So it's like a 360-degree fight when you do unconscious work, because you start to defend the core of reality, the core of, you might say, human dignity. You can engage in projection when you don't work with the unconscious. Patriotic Americans, patriots, openly cheering on or wanting a civil war or wanting the country to fracture, here in America at least. The United States of America fought a civil war to preserve it, but patriots calling for secession, etc. Anti-racists who can be overtly racist, free speech advocates who want to silence people, tolerant, kind people who are extremely intolerant. This is all unconscious possession. They haven't done unconscious work. And you have to watch who people make heroes of. That's always a really good indication of where society's going, who they listen to, who they admire, who they kneel to. I have another Jung clip here, I think, and he talks about Hitler and what was Hitler to the German people. And he's asked, is Hitler a father figure? That's really interesting, because I studied my graduate studies investigating fascism and Maoism and communism, totalitarian movements. And one aspect of fascism is you treat the head of state like a father. It's called the Führerprinzip. You treat the head of state like a father. So there's that aspect to it. But Jung has a really interesting answer here to, was Hitler a father figure? I would say yes, but Jung obviously is right about what Hitler, maybe more than the father figure, was to the German people in the 1930s and 40s.
How would you look at Hitler in this light? Would you see him as a personification, a symbol of the father?
Oh,
No.
not at all.
No.
I couldn't possibly explain that very complicated fact Hitler represents. It is too complicated. Oh, he's a hero figure.
Yeah.
And the hero figure is far more important than any fathers that have ever existed.
Much broader than
No, he
the
was
immediate
not a father
father
at all. Not at all. He was a hero
Yeah.
in the German myth.
Yeah.
And, mind you, a religious hero. He was a savior.
Yes. Yes.
He was meant to be a savior. That is why they put his photo upon the altars. Or somebody declared this too, so that he is happy that his eyes have beheld Hitler.
So
How would you?
that's exactly right about Hitler. I've read stories, for instance, of they had the Hitler Youth, and this young kid, he was like 12 years old, he went marching with the Hitler Youth and he caught pneumonia. And anyways, the next day they had another march, and Hitler was going to be there to see the Hitler Youth off. Anyways, the kid could barely stand, but the father comes in and says, you have to go. You have to go march today. I don't care if you're sick. Anyways, the kid goes and marches and ends up dying. The father doesn't cry. He's extremely proud because his son still got to meet Hitler before he died. So it's like this brainwashing, this hero worship is very dangerous. So you're always watching for people when they kneel to politicians, right? It doesn't matter, again, which side they kneel to. When you kneel to a politician, when too many people are kneeling to politicians, treating them as saviors, it means something's broken. And Jung was a proponent of you need something higher than politics to worship. The world goes to hell when you do that, when politics becomes too important in people's lives. There's denial if you don't work with the unconscious. There's tons and tons of examples of this throughout literature. My favorite is Dr. Faustus. Faust makes a deal with the devil to have 24 years on earth, and he can do whatever he wants. The catch is, by the end of it, he's going to go to hell. So he makes a deal with Mephistopheles and Lucifer, and Mephistopheles comes to earth. And when Mephistopheles comes to earth, they go and raise all kinds of havoc all over the world. He's hanging out with the devil, Faustus is. And at one point in the play, it's written by Marlowe, Faust says, hell isn't real. It doesn't really exist. Now, keep in mind, he's hanging out with the devil, but a part of him has rejected the idea of hell. It's like he's in denial, even though he's spending time with the devil, right? Faust says, come, I think hell's a fable. And then Mephistopheles says, think so still till experience change thy mind. He's saying, wait till you get there. So people make deals with the devil because they might not think the devil's real. We can go deeper into that. You can suffer from repression, repress out how you really feel. And this creates all types of problems, which leads to denial, which leads to projection. Repression is the thing that I focus on most. You can see projection all the time in the Salem witch trials. The inner guilt and fear and envy was projected onto others during the Salem witch trials. You can get displacement where you lash out at others. If you've ever read Catcher in the Rye when you were in high school, if you remember, most of you probably read it. Holden Caulfield, he lashes out at the phonies, but he's probably displacing his own fear of growing up and grief over his brother's death. You get reaction formation, where you act in the exact opposite way of your impulses. You see this in relationships when a couple's in a fight and maybe the relationship's in danger. Somebody will say, I hate you, I never want to see you again. And you actually know what they really mean is, I love you so much, I hope you never leave my side. So you do this to protect your ego. It's all unconscious though. You may not even know you're doing it. Maybe it's subtly there or something. And a light went off in here, whatever. You can rationalize it away. Like in Macbeth kills Duncan to get the crown. And then he says, it had to be done. It was necessary. But he's just power hungry. He's trying to avoid guilt and fear, and it doesn't work. And Macbeth starts seeing the knife in front of him. He's haunted by it. You can have regression. You can go back to an earlier time. This happens all the time also in relationships when people are having a really intense fight. They might start screaming and kicking like a toddler. You can regress. You might identify with somebody else to try to feel better about yourself. You might puff your chest out and try to emulate some figure. You might do this unconsciously. You probably will do this unconsciously to feel better about yourself. There's compensation. If you don't deal with the unconscious, if you ever read A Great Gatsby, he compensates for his feelings of inferiority with these lavish parties. And then, of course, there's fantasy and escapism. I always talk about this because Karen Horney, who was a neo-Freudian, she said something very interesting. She added to Anna Freud was Freud's daughter. She added to her defense mechanisms with this idea. Have you ever had the experience where you're like, you know what I'm going to do? I'm just going to disappear from society. Dillon is going to go off into the woods. I'm going to be a monk. I'm going to be like super peaceful. Everybody's going to wonder, where did he go? He closed down his Instagram. He just disappeared. And then you're going to imagine that like your friends are out hiking one day and then they come across you in the woods in your little monk robe, sitting peacefully enlightened. Karen Horney pointed out that this is a defense mechanism. Now, there are some people who really have a desire to go in the woods and do that. But a lot of people, it's a fantasy, right? It's a fantasy to run away from the unconscious. Other dangers are an undealt with unconscious can lead to anxiety, depression, and rage. I was working with somebody who had anxiety, and I had a vision come to me when I was doing unconscious work of what they were going through. And it was a bunch of piranhas essentially attacking their spine and like screaming. So that was the vision that came when I was working with this person. And I shared it with them. They go, holy shit, that's exactly how I feel. So the unconscious, again, you can use it to help others, which I've done a lot of. We'll talk about that actually towards the end of the talk. We talked about the dangers of mass possession of the unconscious, fascism, socialism, nihilism, and so on and so forth. There's also spiritual dangers if you don't deal with the unconscious. There's a really interesting paper written by Paul Vitz. It was about the Oedipal complex. Now think about the Oedipal complex. If you don't know it, Freud said we all have this internal desire, at least in men, to kill the father and marry the mother, right? And we want to take the father's place. And Freud was a famous atheist, and he didn't believe in God. And Vitz was a neo-Freudian, and he said, hold on, maybe the Oedipal complex is you, Freud, wanted to kill the father, but you want to kill God the Father and take his place. So it's like a little twist, like maybe atheism is a murder of God the Father and the atheist takes his place. I have a lot of respect for atheism. If any atheists are out there, I'm just saying it's an interesting take on the Oedipal complex. But you can become a militant atheist, which is too extreme. You can become a fanatical religious person if the unconscious takes over, become violent, blow up a bus full of kids for God. You can engage in new age insanity. You can engage in cult-like behavior. And honestly, it can just stall your progress if you're a spiritual person. The unconscious is made of energies and emotions, like we talked about. It's also made of stories and narratives and the archetypes, of course. Well, I wanted to take a little side note here. If you get into Jung, you'll notice that he studies astrology and alchemy, like actual old alchemical texts. The reason he's doing this is not because he believed in these things, but he thought because when they were first practicing astrology, they didn't really know anything about science. So whatever they were producing essentially was coming from within them. They didn't know alchemy wasn't possible. So whatever was coming out of them, he thought had to be from the unconscious. It had to be like their projections from what was beneath awareness. So he thought he could study these texts and start to find certain patterns, certain motifs, again, the archetypes as he studied them. So it's a genius way. He thought, how can I study the unconscious? When were people being creative, so to speak, it was like a pure creation of their unconscious? He thought astrology and maybe alchemy. I said it had teleological impulses. There are some neuroscientific parallels here. I won't get too much into that. Let's just do a whirlwind tour of some of the archetypes. There's a hero archetype, which we mentioned in terms of Hitler, but there's also the positive hero archetype. There's the shadow, which we've been talking about, hinting around. I do a talk called Come to Know Your Dark Side, which is a lot like this talk, but I really go specifically into, I call it the dark side because it's the shadow plus some other things. That's what I discovered in the unconscious. There's the anima and animus. I'll talk a little bit more about this in the future because I had a really cool insight with this. It was a personal insight, but it's also generally known. There's the rebel. You get the rebel archetype, someone like Prometheus who challenges divine authority. You get Lucifer who defies God. You get someone like Tyler Durden, Fight Club. These are all rebels. There's the destroyer. There's the one who kills off what is to make room for the new, or it's like the wicked destroyer who kills to kill, kills for annihilation, kills because he or she wants nothing else to exist. There's the trickster. There's a lot of tricksters in society right now. I think trickster, gesture, clowns. If you look at our political scene, again, on both sides, if you're American, you see a lot of clowns. So the clowns take over before, I think the clowns come, they're like the front guard, the advance guard of more terrible, terrible people. So the clowns come first. Beware of the clowns. More archetypes, and I put Mo there, apparently. Wise old man, green man, which we talked about, the king, queen, leader, mystic, sage, magician, explorer, hater, elitist, good son, good daughter, lover, seducer, everyman. The loser is an archetype that a lot of people get wrapped up in. And I want to point out the last two here, the bitch archetype and the asshole archetype. I point that out because maybe some of you saw it. My next talk's going to be on those two archetypes because I think they're everywhere. It's part of my language because there's a lot of bitchy people and a lot of assholey people. This has nothing to do with sex or gender, right? It's just a slightly different style that seems to be quite prevalent nowadays. And I think social media and the internet's exacerbating it. Okay. So I ran through that in 45 minutes. Great. Now we can get to how do you do this, which I'm sure a lot of you are wondering. How do you start to go into the unconscious? I'll look at these questions really quick. Is meditation considered unconscious work? Not necessarily. There are types of meditations that can be unconscious work, but meditation, like in the sense of the way I think you mean it, it's not really unconscious work. Were there other questions? The chat function in Zoom is terrible. Oh, I see War and Peace and dying. Okay, cool. Does engaging with archetypes of the unconscious work? Yeah, so IFS is internal family systems. It's I don't mean this in a derogatory way, it's a regurgitation in a lot of ways of Jungian thought, which a lot of things are. If you've heard the word meme, this came from Richard Dawkins. And it really is, memes are archetypes. A lot of things that you engage with will be regurgitations of things from Jung. Yeah, so internal family systems is very Jungian for sure. You could say unconscious. Now, Jung's deeper, Jung's a little bit more mythical, a little bit more, it's tying in some more literature, so on and so forth. Okay, so how do we explore the unconscious? Number one is to get more exposure to unconscious ideas. Come to talks like this, right? Listen to lectures on Freud and Jung, but like I said, don't do it too much so you can still verify for yourself what's in the unconscious, that other people have found it too. You don't want to read everything and then go in the unconscious because you always have this doubt, like, did I really find the Green Man on my own, or did I find the Green Man because I read about the Green Man? So always leave some things off to the side. Jung's Red Book, by the way, is a very fun read. But if you read the Red Book, you're going to get a lot of Jung and a lot of the archetypes. They say if you read Freud, you'll have Freud dreams, and if you read Jung, you'll have Jung dreams, and that is absolutely true. As you read Freud, you'll start to have Freudian dreams, and as you read Jung, explore Jung dreams will come up. It's fun, so you can explore that as well. You should know that the unconscious wants to be explored too. When you start to go into the unconscious, you may have this flood of imagery, this flood of emotions, a bunch of archetypes might activate. The unconscious wants to be known. It wants to be explored. Here's some book recommendations. Again, I'll share the slides so you can check these out. Memories, Dreams, Reflections, I think, is a great starting point. Then you can go to Man of His Symbols. And then there's a lot of other books you can read. Robert Johnson also has some good books. I think it's He and She are two books I would recommend reading. They're short too, so you can read them quickly. Okay, so this is my main method. How did every day I go into the unconscious? I use a method called automatic writing. And automatic writing is simply what it sounds like. You get into a sort of state where you get into the sort of state where your brain goes numb or quiet, dumb, you might say, and you just start typing. And the conscious mind is off, and the fingers are moving, and words are coming out, and you're a witness to what's arriving. It's a little bit subtle to get. It's a little bit nuanced. It takes some finesse, but once you get it, you can do it on command. And there's really two ways to use unconscious writing. One is to sit down and just start typing. You can do that. But what I do mainly is I ask a question, and then I wait for the response. So I ask a question, then my fingers start moving. I ask a question, and the unconscious answers. This is a really terrific method. It's also great because as you're doing it, you're having a track record of what you're doing. So every day for about 3 years, I went into the unconscious for 30 minutes up to 2 or 3 hours a day. And every day I started building this conversation with the unconscious. It would build on it. If I had a dream, I would explain the dream in this notebook I have. I typed it out, and then I would use this automatic writing method to analyze the dream. Now, this is where it'll blow your mind, and I'm going to give an example of this right after I go through these methods, but I would have a dream or these symbols or a vision. Sometimes you wake up in the morning and you just have this vision pop in your head, and I would scribble it down as fast as I could, like whatever I saw, and I'm not a great artist, right? But I would write it down, and then you use the automatic writing method. You'd say, okay, like in this image I have here, what does this rock with wings mean? You said, what does the rock with wings mean? And then your unconscious just answers. I can't stress to you enough. There's no conscious activity. There's no conscious thought. It's just spewing out of you. And you'll also notice when you do this automatic writing method, it doesn't talk like you. It doesn't use the language that you use. It has its own sort of style. Okay, so automatic writing is something you'll want to do every day. Every single day. If we were in person, I would stop the class right now and we do 10 minutes of automatic writing. I did an automatic writing seminar in New York City. I had maybe 15 people show up, and it was my first time doing it. I was like, I don't know if people are going to be able to actually do this. But I brought paper and I brought pencils and I handed it out. And I said, okay, take 10 minutes and just write. Use the method, ask a question, just write. And I was worried it wasn't going to work. 10 minutes goes and people are still down writing. 15 minutes goes, people are still writing. 20 minutes goes and people are still writing. So anyways, I had to wrap it up, and everybody was able to do it, which was awesome. And I still keep in touch with some people who went to that class, and they've been doing it. This was maybe last year. They've been doing it every day for a year. As you go into the unconscious with this writing style, this is where you're going to start to get these breakthroughs. Now, some of the things you can do when you're doing this is you can talk to different archetypes. You can say, may I talk to the shadow? May I talk to the anima? You can talk to almost personalities, certain personality types, the saint, right? And then you can have these entities ask where you need to go next. You can ask, what direction should I take in my unconscious work? And all these weird images you've been seeing, a lot of them came from my unconscious work. A lot of them I sketched out. I plan to redo them and make them better at some point. But for now, I just do them as quick as I can on an iPad. I always have stuff near you to write things down. It might be the middle of the day and you get a vision. Write it down. It might be the middle of the day where you start to daydream and something comes up. Always be ready to write things down. Some rules about this. The unconscious, when you're doing automatic writing, it's never going to recommend violence, lying, hate, revenge. Now, if you're talking to the dark side or the shadow, those elements will come up, okay? But it's not going to recommend it. It's going to describe what it wants to do, but not what you should do, okay? If it's ever giving you commands, that's not unconscious work. The answers will never be grandiose. A lot of the time, the unconscious is going to put you in your place, okay? So it's not going to tell you you're the king of the world and you should be in power or something, or you should be a millionaire, right? The answers are going to sometimes startle you and it's going to point out your weaknesses. It's going to point out what you can't do. It also can be uplifting. I'm not saying it can't be uplifting. It can give you direction. It can give you energy, but it's going to be honest. You might ask, okay, what actually is happening here? Who or what is talking back, writing back? I've come to call it nature's self. Not the best name. I need to work on the marketing for this, but I call it nature's self because I think it's actually something biological in us that is responding, something that's born of nature. But it's also like on this weird little line between this world and you might say the next world. It's like it can peek over to the other side, so to speak, and get some input from there. But it's not of that world. It's still our physical world. It arose from the human interaction, really all of species interaction with this earth. All the struggles, all the fights, all the Darwinian evolution to reach our status now. So I call it nature self because it's a part of nature. It's not from the other side, right? It's not channeling, right? It's your own voice. It's your own inner self speaking to you. And again, you can talk to these different archetypes as well. And when you talk to the different archetypes, you'll know that it's those things, like I said, like when the green man looked at me, that he had his quote unquote own consciousness, that there is something autonomous about these things. That's what scared Jung at first when he would go into the unconscious, is that these things didn't listen to him. They acted in their own way a lot of the time. They moved without your control or command. And that's what kind of flipped Jung out at first. Okay. So just to get a little more granular, what the steps are: sit down at a computer or have a pen and paper. I like a computer. It's fun to write it out, but if you ever want to turn it into something, you eventually got to take all of that handwritten stuff and type it out, or maybe you can upload AI and it can read it for you. But I like to type now. I type faster. My hand doesn't get as tired. Okay. Adopt a witnessing state of mind. You get stupid. You ask a question, you just kind of get stupid and see what comes out of your fingertips. You can ask questions about anything. It doesn't have to be like deep questions. You can ask about personal problems like money, work, coworkers who are a-holes, right? Your health, love, family. Ask about anything. So a lot of my stuff, I'm turning all of this into a book. I'm cutting out all the personal stuff I put in there, right? You don't want to hear, what should I do about this parking ticket? But I'll ask the unconscious stuff like that. You can ask about unconscious work. You can ask about other archetypes. You can ask about world affairs, the state of a nation, a city. You'll find that the self is wise. And like I said earlier, and it's centrist. What I really mean is chorused. That it answers in the way a wise person would. And you can also ask yourself, like, what would the warrior do here? It will respond. What should the wise old man do? What should the pragmatist do, etc. It can help you, furthermore, deal with spiritual problems and dilemmas. Be honest when you are doing automatic writing, catch yourself if you start consciously writing, because sometimes you're going automatic and then your conscious mind kicks in. Now you're directing the sentence. You got to catch yourself and erase those, delete them. So what I do if that happens, I delete and I wait till the unconscious kicks back in. You got to make sure you're not consciously guiding this. And I know if you haven't done it, it probably doesn't make a ton of sense to you, but you do get good at this. It's like anything. It's a skill you can develop. And then just keep asking it questions. Write something, you say, I don't understand, explain more. It'll keep asking it to rephrase it until you understand what it's trying to say. One of the best things I ever discovered was that I could ask for visions. I could ask for, sometimes these visions would spontaneously arise, like I said, but I could also ask the unconscious to give me a vision. And I would say, okay, I would literally just say, give me a vision for today. And suddenly it'd be like, I don't know if this was one that spontaneously came or not, I can't remember, but it would say something like, you're standing on a field with a clock, and fighting on one side are fruits and on the other side are vegetables. And they're shooting arrows with bombs attached to them. Sounds ridiculous. And as I'm writing it, as the unconscious is telling me this, I'm like, what the hell is this even about? This makes no sense whatsoever. It's psychotic. It sounds like psychotic rambling. Oh, and the sky's filled with noodles, by the way. I'm watching this. So it gives me this vision, and then I use the unconscious writing method to analyze the vision. I'm going to give you a demonstration of this in just a moment. So you'll find no matter how wacky it gets, the unconscious has purpose and has a meaning, right? There's a logic to it. And it gives you more confidence when one vision talks to another vision, which talks to a dream. Step 3 is to also collect your dreams. Okay, so you're exposing yourself. Step 1 is expose yourself to unconscious talks, books. Step 2 is do automatic writing every day. And step 3 is be ready to capture your dreams. Always have a notepad, and no matter how tired you are, wake up, write it down. Don't go back to sleep. Don't give yourself even 30 seconds. You can forget it. If you have a dream, write it down. If you miss a dream, don't panic, because an important message from the unconscious will come back. There will be some dreams you have, and I bet you already have some that just stick with you. So another thing you can do is think, if you've had dreams from your past, you can bring those into your work and say, hey, I had a dream when I was 10 years old. I never forgot. Use the automatic writing method to analyze it. Okay, so I had dreams. I've always had these dreams of certain cityscapes with certain gardens and certain places that have always come up, like a recurring place. And I use the unconscious method to go into those old dreams that I could remember. So you can do that. But dream work is the classic, how you get into the unconscious. But you can't really do dreams on command. So the automatic writing method starts to awaken the unconscious a little bit more as well. Keep in mind that you also need lots of dreams. The same way that you can't use just a symbol book to interpret your dreams, you can't just really interpret one dream. You need like almost hundreds of them. Then the dreams start to make sense, because you'll get these recurring elements in your dreams that make sense to you. So one-off dream analysis, I know people like to throw their dreams into ChatGPT, can be useful. But if you're really doing unconscious work, you need a collection of dreams to do this, okay? Your dreams can represent your internal life and or the external world. Sorry to keep bringing up Nazis, but there's just so much unconscious material there. There was a woman named Charlotte Barat who collected dreams of people who lived under the Third Reich. And I wish these people had done like Jungian analysis on their dreams, because I think it would have been really fascinating. Some of them are just like in your face, you know exactly what they mean, but I think they could even go deeper. But she collected secretly 300 dreams of German citizens between 1933 and 1939. That Hitler came to power in 1933. The war started in 1939, September 1st, 1939. So this is really interesting to see how the unconscious is working. And if you want to read a chilling book that doesn't have a lot to do with the unconscious, but is still fascinating, it's I Shall Bear Witness. Okay, I Shall Bear Witness. And it was written by a man who kept a diary every day through the 1930s as Germany and Nazis came to power in Germany. Really, really powerful book. The themes in Nazi dreams, and the reason I pull this up is because you want to find the themes in your dreams, because it'll tell you something about your external world. So in the Nazi dreams, it was self-censorship, and surveillance, loss of identity and agency, bureaucratic horror, like Kafka-esque dreams where they do something very small wrong and then they're trapped in the system. And then there's guilt and complicity, Like some of the non-Jewish Germans had dreams of being guilty, feeling guilty. Just one example of a dream, it's like a 1984 type dream. It's illegal to turn off this loudspeaker in his room. This man has a dream and he can't turn off a loudspeaker in his room or block the sound. And the loudspeaker plays Hitler's speeches day and night, even in the most private space of his home. The man feels watched, not just from the outside, but inside his mind, as if the speeches are meant to occupy his thoughts entirely. So one of the philosopher named Foucault, who I'm not a huge fan of, but he pointed out that in certain societies, you get an internal watcher. You get this in an oppressive society, you feel like you're always being watched even when you're not. So it's cool to see the connection between some philosophical works and real experience in Nazi Germany. And also, obviously, this is something like 1984. Okay, so I'm going to wrap up here in the next 5 minutes. I'll go through maybe 6 minutes, 4 cool things that I found in the unconscious as I did my work, just something I thought I'd share with you. My first automatic writing insight was when I was in my early 20s. I wasn't doing unconscious work, but I was just sitting somewhere and I'm like, what if I just write and see what comes out? I wasn't very happy at the moment. I was having a tough time and I couldn't figure out what was going on. And for some reason, I was just like, let me just write and see what comes out. I thought I had invented something new. And then I realized like William James used automatic writing. That was an old method. But anyways, it told me I suffered. Now, this wasn't my language in my early 20s. It told me I suffered from the plague of status. I was like, holy shit, that's exactly what I suffer from. This is why I'm unhappy. I was trying too much to be important, trying to like have a good reputation and things like that. I was like, oh, I'm not trying to be myself. I care too much what other people think. And it called it the plague of status. So, oh yeah, I'm trying to have status rather than just do what I want to do. So it cured me in a moment. That was my first insight. And it was before I ever did unconscious work, but it was the very first time I ever used automatic writing. The second insight I had was the 4 basic patterns of the anima and animus. And very briefly, in a man and a woman, generally speaking, anima possession is the anima is the repressed feminine in the man, and the animus is the repressed masculine in the female. So when a man gets anima possession, he can get, I'm just using the typical, what people typically call it in the unconscious, by the way, isn't politically correct. The anima possession in a man is called the PUSY. That's what anima possession is a man. He's diffident, he's emotional, he's moody, he's passive. He's the beta male, you might say. But men can also be possessed by their own animus. If they push the anima out too much, if they repress the animus takes over. And you get someone like, I don't know, Andrew Tate or something, the asshole, the jerk, the machismo man, right? And a woman, it goes the other way. If she represses her anima too much, she gets possessed by the animus. And this is what we call the bitch archetype. Generally speaking, in women, right? Generally speaking, you can have bitchy men and assholey women and so on and so forth. But again, generally speaking, traditional classic Jungian thought, this is how it breaks down. And then a woman too much possessed by the anima can become the pushover, or can become that person with too much compassion, which is also deadly. So a lot of women who initially did Jungian work or Freudian work, they were able to activate their animus a little bit and get a little bit more power, you might say. And some of the men who did Jungian work back in the 1950s and 60s, they suddenly found themselves crying. They hadn't cried since they were kids. They'd blocked out all their emotion. So they allowed the anima to come in, which can be a little bit more emotional. You can think of these not as energy, or not as like sex and gender as much as just energies, right? Number 3 was a conversation I had with an archetype I didn't know existed, which was called the barterer. And the barterer essentially is the archetype of business and trade. And it gave me some insights into how to run my business better. It helped me conceptualize what would make a good business, what makes somebody a good entrepreneur. And it essentially told me that you have this unconscious animosity towards me, the barterer. I get no respect. Barterer says, I get no respect, but I'm actually the reason the world is so much better now. I'm the reason there's so much medical advance. I'm the reason that standard of living has gone up. I'm the reason that global poverty has gone way down over the last 100 years, right? So he had this sort of animosity, this archetype. He or she had this sort of animosity about not being recognized and almost being demonized in society. This is the last thing I'll show you before, actually just one more small thing after this, and then we'll have time for Q&A. I had a conversation with the shadow, with the dark side. And it was one of the most powerful moments in all of my unconscious work. So I'm going to play for you what it said. And it also was angry. It also was upset. It was upset because it was not being acknowledged. And when it's not acknowledged, it takes you over. It takes over society. So let me play this. I had a recording to it. I was going to read it, and I was like, I'm going to just make a recording. Okay, so I'm going to play. This was, I would say, the peak, maybe the best moment of my unconscious work. One of the best moments of my unconscious work. Because it was like, it just came, what you're going to read here came out in one go. Okay, just one go. And there's actually more. I cut it out for time's sake. But let's listen to this.
Conversation with the shadow. I am that which is lost to time in the modern age, but I appear when there is any upheaval, any rage in any form. I am in all men. I am the diabolical. I am the hatred in eyes. I am the sharpness of tongue. I am the fingers that become claws and clubs. I am the concussion. I am the stab. I am the gunshot. I am the howling of joy at destruction. I am the burning car. I am the night where evil is more easily hidden. I am the berserk. I am the news cycle. I am fury. I am the dark arts. I am the sophistication of the evil in all beings. I am the mothers weeping and taking pleasure in seeing it. I am the giggle at the horror, and I am the tickling feeling when someone is maimed or slaughtered. I am that part of you that is part of all people, that they will not acknowledge, that they will not see. I must be heard. I must be known, or I am havoc. I am the terror of life. I am the bringer down of societies. I am the ruiner of lives, relationships, and dreams. I am the source of all nightmares. I am the bringer of all mood swings. I am the reason you can't be happy. I am the reason you say evil when love is simple to say. I am the storm. I am the visions of carrion of the past wickedness you have done. I store all slights. I catalogue all wrongs. I am the vomit of rage that erupts over minor things. The more I am blocked, the stronger I become. I like to wait and wait. Sometimes I hold myself back, so that when I do lash out I rip holes into the earth, into other people's lives, into time. I am the viciousness that makes you want to bite and thrash and rip people by limbs. You won't do this as you fear prison, but if there was no prison, I am your true self. I'm the jungle, the deep sea. I am the energy that gives whiplash and snarls and grunts, and destroys all that is good. People fear I will take them over, that I want to run them. Denying me is what makes me take them over. Are you evil? I am human. I am what kept you alive in great perils. I am what protects you from the viciousness of other forms of me. You need me to protect me from others in the form of me. I am the building debris. I am bombs. I am the horrible poor. I am the war-torn. I love certain philosophies that justify me and intensify me. I love Nazism, white supremacists, Islamicists, the KKK, woke, Mao. That is me. That is my doing. But only because I am not allowed expression. Only because I will not be given a voice. Only because people do not acknowledge me. If I am acknowledged, knelt to for a while, I will go away.
So that
Conversation
is
with
the dark side of the conversation I had. I'll make a quick point because last time I shared this. If you're Muslim, Islamicist is radical Islam. Okay, Islamicist, Islamism is a word for radical Islam. It's not Islam proper or Muslim. It doesn't mean Muslim, it means radical Islam. You can, just to be clear, somebody had a problem with that last time, but it doesn't mean like Islam. Islamicist, Islamism is different than Islam. This was the image that came. I had this vision of this. The scale doesn't do it justice. It was like, imagine a thunderhead pointing at you and attacking you. That's what it felt like, talking to the unconscious. And I think I'll stop here. I was going to show how I made a sketch of one of my visions. Let me know, do you want to stop here and go to Q&A, or would you like me to walk through one of the visions I had? It's up to you all. Walk through? Yeah? Okay, cool. I didn't know if you were getting bored. Okay, so I'll do this relatively quickly. It's an example of a vision that I asked for. Now, I was asking for this vision for someone else. So the unconscious can do this, okay? So nature self, remember I call it nature self. I said, what is an image of healing? This person was having a hard time, psychologically and physically. I'm just going to read the image it gave me. So this is the unconscious writing. I have to stress what you just heard with the shadow wasn't me consciously writing. And what you're going to read here isn't conscious. It said the image is the parting of the earth, and to look down and see the pearly gates and clouds of heaven, and to look up and see God the Father seated upon a stool that is made of gold, and about him angels that have dog tails wagging to fly, and the image of a saint held by God with a man's face on it. And the werewolves in the distance are set fire to by the stairs of angels high in the sky, and the ground is covered with four-leaf clovers, out of which comes the sparkles of the astral realm, that is the celestial realm, and there is music that plays and sweet smells through the land, and the human aspect of reality is depicted as a mannequin with clothes on, with a serious face, surrounded by spirits that laugh and dance and point, mocking the serious humans. There's a skeleton that has feathers for bones, and a feathered eagle with bones for wings that flies in the distance and is proclaiming, "Glory be to God. The highest is in the lowest, and the far away is in every inch of everything." The middle of the images has a lilac and a heart, and the blood of Christ is dripping onto the head of a sinner, and the sinner is crying not in pain, but for the redemption. And the Blessed Virgin smiles and holds the entire image around the outside of the piece. A unicorn with the wings of a butterfly, and a catapult sends demons to the horizon forever to be gone. Now, I have to stress, I didn't write that. I typed it, but it came from the unconscious. Okay, so what I do is after that vision comes, and the vision will just end. You'll know when it's over. It just stops. It flows out of you and it just stops. So when that ended, that was it. That was the end of the vision. Now, sometimes I get the vision and I start to sketch it right away. Sometimes it's too much, right? Too much came out. Maybe I don't have time, but I'll eventually make a sketch, right? So here's a sketch of what I just read to you, okay? This was like as quick as I could do it, just to get it down. As you're writing the vision, that you'll start to see it in your head too. You'll see exactly what it was telling you to write, okay? So maybe day 3, I'll actually get to making the image, right? So I made a little video. This is me drawing this image from the beginning. And I'll speed it up just a little bit so we don't have to wait. Yeah, I had the sketch. And sometimes I do just a real drawing. Sometimes I do what they call photo bash. I'll find images and throw the images in to make the photo. Not a great artist, but this is a lot of fun, believe it or not, right? Now, keep in mind, I still have no idea what any of this means, okay? I have no idea what this image actually means. And this is the final image that I made, okay? It has all the elements of what I was just told to look at, and I try to put it all in there. Now, the image is done. I've got the vision. The image is done. I still don't have any idea what this means, and I don't consciously interpret it. Instead, I ask automatic writing, what did the vision you just give me mean? I want to stress one more time that sometimes you just get the visions. You're sitting there and a vision comes in your head, okay? Sometimes I ask for them. So I think I have 100 or 200 visions that I had while I was doing this unconscious work. Okay, so let's ask the unconscious what this means. And this is, again, this isn't me consciously answering this. I ask the question and then it just flows out of me. Why is the earth parted and heaven is underneath the ground? And why are the pearly gates present? And it said, because there is nowhere heaven is not, even in hell. There are entrances to heaven in every domain. So the person I did this for was really in hell and couldn't find a way out. So you can see the symbolism that heaven is cracked under the earth in a down position, but Christ is there, heaven is there. You can get out of this, is what it's saying. So what are the werewolves? They are the animalistic natures of humans. What are the demons being catapulted? The karma and evil of the world are the demons as understood by humans. And healing is such entities being thrown into the abyss. Hence, they are catapulted from experience. So you can see here the catapults of demons out of the world. Why are there smells and music? I might have cut that out to keep it shorter when I was reading. In healing, all senses, while in the physical domain, are beautiful. Sight, sound, smile, and touch. Why does God hold a sinner's face as a saint and angels with dog tails? The Lord Almighty holds the sinner's face as every life is favored and everyone is headed to God. I think that was meant to say. The angels around God fly on pure love. The dog's tail is the symbol of pure love. Angels are also dogs in the sense that they hunt the wolves of karma and sin. So remember, the werewolves were karma and sin, and dogs, the wolf hunt. You go out and hunt wolves with dogs. Nothing conscious again, right? Their looks along signal to evil that their time is nigh. Why are there four-leaf clovers everywhere? In healing, luckiness is everywhere, and luck shows that the celestial realm is real. Continued ongoing luck is a sign of the Lord's presence. Hence, the fragrance of the four-leaf clovers is the higher realms of the astral. The four-leaf clovers also had a scent, which I don't know if they do in real life, but in the vision they did. What is the mannequin? The skeleton with feather bones and the eagle with bone wings. The mannequin with clothes represents the common mindset of mankind, very serious and overworked. This person, unbeknownst to me, was also very overworked. The unconscious knew it. The free spirits laugh and mock him to bring him back to life. The skeleton with feather bones are those who take the body lightly. So it's saying what this person needed to do was to get rid of his physical being, to not take himself so seriously. And the unconscious represented that as having feathers for bones. Really neat, right? They are the same. That is the man who transitions to a spiritual life. He's telling this person to transition to a spiritual life. The eagle with bone wings is the Lord who takes death away from the man, flies it away. So there's an eagle. Eagles very often in the unconscious are symbolic of the Lord. A lot of great poetry where eagles, hawks are the Lord. The eagle has bone wings. That's the bones from the man being flown away from the eagle. Now, again, none of this was conscious as I was writing this. And the answers aren't conscious at all. I wrote all of this in 20 seconds, okay? Like it just comes out of you. And there's a sign that proclaims to all those in hell and sin, glory be to God. The highest is in the lowest, and the far away is in every inch of everything. Burden not be the man's alone. What is the unicorn with butterfly wings? The unicorn is the rare life, and the butterfly wings suggest the delicate things, the frail things can lift man to a rare life. First man is the mannequin, then he is the man with feathered bones, as the eagle, Christ Lord, takes away his bones, his boned wings, and then he becomes the rare and rarely seen unicorn that flies to heaven on kindness and softness of soul. Why the Virgin, Mary, and Rosary? Around the entire scene is the Virgin who is cradling this image as she would the newborn Lord. She thus holds the world, and anyone who finds the state is near the born Lord. It is the maternal love that is the heart of God. She is the heart of God, and there is not heaven without the love of Mary. And the Rosary shows that reality is drenched in holiness, encompassed by it, by the worshiping of men, and all angels of all creation is held together. There are endless waves of angels in every speck of all existence, and then it ended with amen. This person was a Catholic, something I did know, but go back to the image, it put Mary around, wanted Mary around the entire scene, like cradling the scene. So you can see all of the images here. You have the angels with dog tails, the demons catapulted, Christ here bleeding his heart on the head of the sinner. You get the pearly gates back here. It's in a canyon, the feathered bones. You get the man who's overworked and mocked because he's working too hard and taking the world too seriously. There's the clovers with good luck. And then finally, there's the unicorn with butterfly wings, which represents holiness. And you can go even deeper into this. I hope that gives you an insight into why this is such a crazy method. None of that was conscious. None of the logic there that came out of it was conscious. Okay. So just to conclude, you do the unconscious for stuff like this, and you will start to see that your unconscious is extremely powerful and extremely useful in your life. And that ends the talk, and we can do a Q&A if you have questions. Can you see me? Am I back? I hope that went okay. It was my first time giving this talk, first time going through those slides. So I hope it went okay and not too long or boring. I'm trying to catch up on the notes here, the questions here. It seems absolutely to say it's independent of you. So when you say it's from the unconscious, I guess technically it is you. Functionally, it doesn't feel like you because we're so much our conscious mind, right? And when it's like you have a dream, and unless you're lucid dreaming, the dream just appears to you. Now, yes, it comes from you. It's part of you, certainly. But you might also say you don't know where it's coming from, right? Like you don't know what you're going to dream tonight. You can't plan it because the unconscious kind of has a mind of its own. But so it operates independently of you, even though, yes, it is you. So good question. Lana.
That was really fabulous, Dillon. Thank you very much for sharing all this. And I'm really glad to come across this.
Thanks.
Right now in my life. I just came across this gateway experience. Have you heard of that? And actually, David has the similar question that I was going to ask, which is about like doing something like mushrooms or anything like the psychedelic experience, and how does that play a role in all this? when do you do your writing? Is it better to do it in the morning and at night? And do you do consultations?
So great questions. I'm glad you enjoyed it. I couldn't tell how it was going as I was giving the giving the talk. Sometimes you just don't. It's so hard with Zoom because you get no facial feedback. You can't like pivot because you just don't know. So thanks. I'm glad you enjoyed it. The gateway thing, is it like the Lion's Gate or something? I've been seeing this a lot. I have no idea what it
Has
is.
to do with hearing. It's like a meditation, like somebody asked earlier about meditation, but it's more deeper than that. And like your both of your hemispheres are working together to go really deep into the sub or unconscious, I think. I don't know enough about it yet. I just
Okay, me neither, but I'll explore it. I wrote it down, so I'll explore it.
You can go
Just
into a
to-
little more if you like.
Sure.
So Robert Monroe in the 1960s developed a way to have an out-of-body experience by using binaural beats. So he philosophized that the right hemisphere of the brain, the left hemisphere of the brain vibrate at different frequencies, anywhere from 4 to 7 hertz. So he theorized that if you play, say, 107 hertz in one ear and 114 hertz in the other ear, your brain would sync up on the same frequency and you'd be able to do a little bit of an out-of-body experience.
I'm very familiar with Robert Monroe. I didn't know that was that was the gateway that was being spoke of. Yeah, I've read all of Robert Monroe's books, and a guy who I'm a fan of, David Hawkins, who passed away in like 2012. He went to the Monroe Institute and did a lot of out-of-body experience. I actually had somebody come to my seminar who'd been to the Monroe Institute. So I didn't know that was the gateway. I wouldn't call that unconscious work, though you probably could morph that into unconscious work. It might be something interesting to see if by using those beats to see if something comes up. You should explore it. Out-of-body experiences are certainly something that could be used for unconscious work, I would assume. So I definitely want to check that out. Very cool. But is the gateway, is that part of Robert Monroe's teaching, or is it just like an addition to what he like somebody built something on top of what he taught?
The gateway process was developed by Robert Monroe.
That's the gateway process. Okay.
And then CIA studied it and classified all the reports on it as well.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah. For some reason, didn't recall it's called the gateway method. Okay. But yeah, I read his book and his most famous book. I don't know if he wrote other books, and I've watched documentaries on him. So I'm very interested in it. Actually, my neuroscience research does some out-of-body illusions, actually, which is neat. Mushrooms and psychedelics. Personally, I think if you're going to use mushrooms or psychedelics, it's good for unconscious work. I don't think it's very useful for spiritual work, other than maybe opening your eyes to spirituality a little bit. I know some people are materialist atheists and they did ayahuasca or something, and suddenly they're like, okay, maybe there's something else. I think to actually make progress, it should be natural. There are certain traditions, Native American traditions, that can take you on a spirit journey and go through the unconscious. Make sure you do it with an expert if you do it, and be very careful. I'm straight edge. I've never smoked anything, drank anything, done any drugs. So it's not my cup of tea, but I do know people. I think if you look at mushrooms, psychedelics as a psychological experience more so than a spiritual experience, you can make a lot of progress and probably get some insights. There's typically a lot of imagery in psychedelic experiences, obviously, and you can use that imagery. It might give you access to more information faster. Me, I'm more all natural. I like to just do it because I think I didn't want any assistance, but it's something I think each person needs to determine for themselves if they want to do it. I should say, it seems like there's some good studies coming out regarding PTSD and using certain hallucinogens, or I don't know if they're hallucinogens, but maybe ayahuasca or something. I'll have to look. I can't remember exactly what is used. I'm sure some of it. And the time of day I do it, typically the morning. I like to get it done because what you'll find is if you're in a kind of groggy state, the unconscious might be a little more active, but I've also done it in the middle of the day. I've done it at night, but typically it's the morning because you might not feel like doing it later. And here's the thing, you have to do it even when you don't feel like doing it. Sometimes you'll have your best sessions when you're like, oh, I don't want to do this. Great questions. And thanks for explaining that, Andrew. Have your automatic writing sessions caused you to write about entities or concepts, say, from an obscure culture or religion you haven't ever consciously learned about? Sort of. I'm still going through and editing a lot of it and making the connection. So like all of the work's done, but I'm trying to piece it all together. It has given me verses from the Bible that I'm sure at some point in my life when I was a kid I came across, but they're really obscure verses and they fit perfect for what I'm doing. So I don't think I remembered them. I just don't. But yes, I've come across certain concepts like the barterer that you actually do find in some certain literature, certain myths that aren't Western. You find something like the barterer. Yeah, great question. You will find that. You might find it and not know you found it, because I don't know a whole lot about Eastern folklore. So I'm sure there's elements in my writings I could find if I knew more about Eastern folklore. That's so great. Can working with the unconscious happen in conjunction? Oh, that's what I just answered. Great question. It should still be recording. I hope it is. I don't know why I didn't remember it was called the Gateway Experience. A little too quick. Oh, sorry. I thought it was going too long. I thought it was moving slow. Maybe we can do another one and take 3 hours, have a break, and go through. So yeah, the recording will be up shortly. Yeah, I flew through some of it just so, I put till 7:30. I don't mind staying till 8 or so if you all want to hang around for a little bit. Can lucid dreaming be? Yeah, absolutely. I use lucid dreaming. I've been able to lucid dream since I was young. I just could do it. And lucid dreaming, you can start to, okay, unconscious, what do you want to do here? Or what's this mean? You can start to ask questions and interrogate the unconscious. It seems to make the unconscious excited when you're lucid dreaming, because it's still going to present things for you. Like, you can bring some things in, but as you bring it in, it might twist it or distort it in a certain way, certain elements. When you're lucid dreaming, you have some control, but the unconscious might get really excited, amped up as you do this. It's really fun to see how autonomous the unconscious is. It's mind-blowing when you first encounter it. Like, the green man looking at me on that wing looked at me the way a human being would look at me. Like, it had its own presence, its own kind of soul, so to speak. Yeah, you could definitely speak to the archetypes in lucid dreaming. I've called upon St. Francis in automatic writing and spoke to St. Francis, which is the archetype of St. Francis. And I'll call upon certain historical personalities. What's really happening there is it's an archetype that is talking, but it goes into the personality, right? It's still the archetype. We have impromptu and other optional mindset mechanism. I'm inspired. We can learn more to be more efficient handling real happenings around us. Appreciate your inspiration. Yeah, I completely agree with that. Great comment. Can you talk about predictive dreams? It's often disturbing to me when it happens. Is there a way you tell they're predictive before events happen? Jung seemed to know how to tell. So predictive dreams, a lot of the time, you have to be honest, your dreams that are predictive, it doesn't happen, right? I will say, when I've had any sort of predictive dream, it's a totally different texture. It's a totally different feeling. It's an absolute knowing that something's going to happen. It's not like there's no anxiety, right? Sometimes you have a dream, you wake up, you're like, oh my God, what if this happens? When you have a predictive dream, I've noticed there's none of that. You just go, it's almost like it's already happened, and you're putting in the VHS tape and you know what's on the tape. And so once you put in the VHS tape, what's on the tape's going to play. You can't change it, right? So there's no anxiety about what's going to play on the tape. You're not sitting there, what's going to happen? You know what's going to happen. So that's what I can tell you. When you have a vision that something's going to happen, it's just a knowing. I've had some visions about political uprisings before they've happened. Not because it's not like I'm a seer or anything of that nature. It's that the unconscious picks up on so many subtle things that you don't process. So it's picking up on little glances at headlines. It's picking up tones of voices. It's picking up facial expressions. It's picking up minute body language that you might see in a news broadcast in the background. It's picking up all of this, and it can start to spot monsters while it's small. I have this book I've been working on for years. I'll probably publish it next year. It's called Something Wicked This Way Comes. And it's about spotting evil when it's small, right? So you start to get really good at spotting evil, and the unconscious is uncanny when it spots you, and you see it before others. You detect these patterns earlier. It's called the collective unconscious for a reason. So as you go into the collective unconscious, yes, it's working on you personally, but it's also giving you an insight into what's happening around you. It's giving you an insight to the geopolitics of your life, right? It's giving you an insight into what's happening in your city, your town, your house. Because it's not that, I wouldn't say, it's a point of debate. Is the collective unconscious actually connected to other people? Maybe, right? You could get metaphysical here. Maybe the unconscious is actually connected. If you're not of that mindset, I do think there's something to that. But if you're not of that mindset, what you're essentially saying is, sure, my unconscious is isolated. It's just in my brain, but it's so good at detecting patterns. It feels like it's connected to other people, because I'm starting to sense the way the crowd's going to go, the way the mob's going to move. You start to sense the rise of ancient hatreds in society far long before they show up. You start to sense certain political extremist movements, certain movements that are going to be detrimental to large portions of the population. You start in movies like The Mummy, everybody's seen The Mummy, right? There's always some character who wants to go dig up a grave of some demon because he thinks the demon will help him or her in some way. And you become wise in the sense when you do unconscious work. No, leave those buried ideologies, leave them alone. Leave fascism and communism, leave them over there. They're in the forbidden graveyard for a reason, right? But you start to get, when you do unconscious work, you start, so to speak, to sense people picking up the shovels and pickaxes and walking towards those forbidden graveyards. And you sound like a lunatic at first because you're like, hey, this is coming. These people are going to do this. They're going to go try to dig up these evil ideologies and nobody listens to you. And that's why we have the archetype of Cassandra. Cassandra is the person who can see the future but has never believed. The Cassandra archetype will come up as you do unconscious work. And it's not special. You're not special because you see around corners. The only thing you've done is done the unconscious work. And like I said, you start to know it's going to happen rather than your anxiety, what if it happens, or unsure. So that's the only thing I can tell you. And I think Jung, like when he talked about God, I know God, and he knew certain things were going to happen. He explained the difference between the subconscious and unconscious. So what you could say is there's a conscious mind, then there's a preconscious. And the preconscious is actually something when you do release emotions that you let go of, but the preconscious are things that you can feel right on the edge of consciousness. Like right now, maybe you have some work you haven't done. And if you just pay attention, you can feel a little bit of anxiety about what you have to do later, or you haven't finished today. Or maybe you feel a little guilt because you ate a cupcake or 10 cupcakes. It's preconscious. It's like right there, you can barely feel it. And it might make its way to consciousness, or you push it down and it goes into the unconscious. Beneath the preconscious is the subconscious. And the subconscious can work with the unconscious, but the subconscious is really automatic behaviors. And the unconscious can use the subconscious for automatic behaviors in the sense of it hijacks you and now you're cursing somebody out and you're using words that you typically use when you curse somebody out. So that's like subconscious behavior. You see it with athletes who get in the zone. The subconscious takes over. It's not really the unconscious. And then you have a personal unconscious and a Freudian unconscious where you might say is elements in your unconscious that have to do with you and your personal life only. That are blocked out, like the anger you have at your spouse for not doing the dishes. You're repressing that, repressing it, and it eventually will come out when you smash the dishes and say, why aren't these effing things cleaned? Why haven't you mown the lawn? Or why are you always nagging me? These things get repressed in our personal unconscious. It's things we don't want to deal with. The unconscious at that level has the shadow. The shadow is mostly like your personal shortcomings, but it also has a collective nature because everybody has a shadow and there's similar elements in everybody's shadow for the most part. But different people subconsciously repress or unconsciously repress different things. Beneath that, you have the collective unconscious. This is where the archetypes come in. The archetypes are everything we went through, the hero, the gesture, the anima, the animus. Those are more collective in nature. Everybody has them, but Jung spoke of these archetypes, even though they're universal and everybody has them, that they're like molds. And into that mold, your personal life goes, your personal shortcomings, emotions flow into that and fill the mold. So everybody's anima, animus, shadow looks similar, but they'll be unique. And that's why I warned you against just using dream books to interpret your dreams or throwing in a ChatGPT and ask what it means. Because archetypes and the unconscious are taking on aspects of your subconscious and your personal unconscious into the collective unconscious. So they're all communicating. And if you go a level deeper beyond the collective unconscious, you could say is maybe like a spiritual level. And I know Robert Monroe and others, they felt like they got in touch with other realms, other dimensions. I'm not going there today, but at a deeper level, they called it the astral realms, which are different dimensions. Yeah, great question. Sorry, and you'd asked if I did private consultations. Yeah, if you go to dillonfreed.com, you can schedule a one-on-one there. And I do that usually 3-4 times a week. I have a one-on-one session with people. Most of it is releasing negative emotion, but I do some sessions with people who want to learn how to go into the unconscious. And typically, the 1 or 2 sessions is enough. I usually don't work with people beyond that unless it's like a serious thing, because I don't want to. Once you learn the method, you can just go do the method. And then if you want to check in every 6 months and see how it's going, or you have a question about something you found in the unconscious, or some emotion you're having, or some event you're having a hard time releasing, then I'll work with you again. But like 1, 2, 3 sessions, I think you're on your own. Wayne writes, dreaming may be a suggestive advice, relaxing method to tackle our planning lists. Share all about mind giving us what we will settle after. Yeah, dreams can absolutely help us deal with our to-do lists and all the events in our life and help us organize. If you pay attention to dreams, I can't stress this enough. The more you pay attention to your dreams, the more you write them down, the more you do automatic writing, the dreams get better and better, and they get more useful. They get a lot more useful. They can help you prune away useless stuff in your life, help you see relationships more clearly, help you see, imagine as you do unconscious work, this is the feeling you have. And it takes a year or so before you have this feeling. If you couple the unconscious work with releasing repressed emotion, you get this feeling. It's like going to a maze you've never seen. And maybe somebody lifts you above the maze. You glance at the maze and you see the path instantly. They set you down and you walk through the maze. That's what it feels like as you do unconscious work. You know exactly what to do, when to do it, how to do it, right? Or you know who to find to help you do it, right? It's like everything just starts becoming easier. Path, relationship problem, you know exactly what to do, exactly what to say. Now, I'm not saying you're like this all the time, but there are moments where it's like instantaneously, you know exactly what to do, what to say, how to touch the person, right? How to reach them. It could be a stranger, it could be a lover, it could be a friend, it could be a business thing, it could be a coworker. And it doesn't mean that this happens all the time or life goes on autopilot. It just happens more and more frequently. You actually live in the zone. You live in a flow state, right? Again, coupling this with releasing repressed emotion is the key. So do different people in our lives represent different archetypes? I think people generally have an archetype, at least it depends on the stage of life they're in, that might dominate. So if you meet like a young person in their 20s and 30s, they might be in the warrior mindset. And that warrior mindset could be an entrepreneur. They're trying to conquer their career. As you get older, you might shift into the wise old person mindset. Certain relationships you have with certain people, maybe somebody's the warrior, but with you, they're like the wise person. Or somebody that just for whatever reason, their advice works for you. You could have somebody who's usually quiet, but around certain people, they become the joker. It's like the old joke. A guy has a girlfriend, he brings his friend around, and suddenly the guy who's not usually funny is funny as hell around his new girlfriend or his girlfriend, right? He starts cracking jokes all the time. It's a weird dynamic, right? So certain situations can bring out different archetypes. And you can ask, what archetype are you right now? Or what archetype do you need to be? I adopt different archetypes. If I'm trying to let's say I'm trying to meet a woman, maybe I want to adopt the cool guy archetype, right? I want to seem cool, more confident than I am. So you can adopt that archetype. If I'm going into box, I'm going into fight, a warrior. When I'm doing this, I'm trying to, I guess, I don't think it was conscious, but I'm trying to be wise and I'm trying to be maybe a little bit of a performer or something, right? Like that archetype. It's a lot of different archetypes. Really good question. Joanna, I need help now with manipulators, seducers, people like that. Give you a front of sincerity. Behind the scenes, they're manipulating, right? They're scheming, conniving. So they're very good at it, though. Like real manipulators are the wolf in sheep's clothing. They look like a sheep, but underneath they're wolves. So when you do unconscious work, remember how I said you get discernment? You're able to pick up on manipulator behaviors, which they can mask very well, but you can start to see through it. A woman's intuition is essentially seeing through manipulators, right? A woman's intuition will tell you, this gentleman here says all the right things, does all the right things, but there's something off about him. And that's the unconscious in a woman saying, I really trust woman's intuition. My mom tells me, avoid that person. You're a fool if you don't take that seriously. Somebody earlier in chat asked what you used for drawing your visions. Of course, I love answering your questions too. I use an old ass iPad. But sometimes I'll do it a pen and piece of paper, and then I'll take a picture of the pen and piece of paper, put it in an iPad, and then I draw it. Sometimes I photo bash it. And you can always you want to get the image down, especially if it just comes to your head. Get it down in some form so you can come back to it and fill it in later. I have sketches there's sketches that I have to go back and fill in. And it was maybe 6 months ago that I made the image, but it's an unconscious process. So the image is going to hold its meaning. And even if the meaning evolves a little bit in the time that you go back to see it, it's fine too. Yeah, I tend to do digital art. And then I love the photo bashing because you find photos and there's a bunch of public domain photos and you can manipulate them and use them. And I get it. Like, it's not always exactly what's in my head, of course, but I try to get as close as possible. I just don't know what to do after nonstop of it. I don't know how to stop and when. Go to dillonfree.com. And I should tell everybody at dillonfree.com, totally free, is the letting go program. If you want to learn how to let go of emotions, it's 100%. There's no, just put your email in and you have access to I think it's 6 hours long. You have access to the full program. I think it's under courses, and the course is how to let go. And you can do it for absolutely free. How can you access somatic/body responses? Great question, Lynn. There are people who specialize in that. I might have a guest speaker one of these days who does just that. My method is the same as releasing emotion. I let more of it come up, more of the somatic feelings in the body to come up and process them out. If you go, I make no money off this. I'm not trying to make any money off anybody. Dillonfree.com, the letting go of emotions, the same template you use for emotions, you can use for the body. And I mentioned that in the talk. And 7:47, of course. Any more questions? How young is too young to do letting go of emotions course or to learn these techniques? Like 13 years old? I'd say 13, 14 is probably young enough. Go through the program, know what to expect. Because just like I said, when you go into the unconscious, it's far more extreme. It's far more extreme than what you think is in there. Its solutions to things are sometimes violent, sometimes it can also get risque. It can get, quite frankly, it can get vulgar. So just be prepared for that. It's how the unconscious acts and behaves. Great question. Any more questions? If not, we can wrap it up. I'll stay a little bit longer if needed. If you start auto writing, how do you know you're making progress? That's a good question. If you just keep doing it, I think what happens is you get better at it, actually. You'll know you're making progress in that respect. And then you'll start to just have this effulgence of visions and they just start coming. And then your dreams get better. You'll just know. I know it's a terrible answer, but you'll just know because your dreams will get more in depth. You'll start to have faith that I'm just making this up, like a clown juggling watermelons with elephant ears, right? You'll start to have faith that actually means something. So you start to follow these visions. Because at first, it's going to give you a vision. You go, what in the hell could this possibly mean? It can't mean anything. No way it means something. But then you use automatic writing for each element in the vision, and suddenly it all comes together. You'll also notice, and I didn't fix it up, partly because I wanted to show you, but you'll notice there's typos. So when I'm typing, I can make a ton of mistakes. I don't fix it. Now, I go back and I'll fix it up. But when you're doing automatic writing, don't worry about typos. Don't worry about misspelled words. The other reason I type is, generally speaking, you can reread what you wrote. If you start writing with a pen and sometimes your handwriting is going to get so sloppy because it comes so fast that you won't be able to read what you just wrote. Now, that's not a huge problem because you can ask the unconscious what it said there. But keep in mind, every day you're a new you, so it might answer in a slightly different way. But I love to type because you can usually type faster than you can handwrite. And it's a way to keep a record of what you're doing. Great question. If I don't like how another person is acting, you don't know how, sorry, the emoji thing's covering what you wrote, how to act without being triggered. You can do unconscious work on that, but I really think for that specifically, you want to let go of the emotion associated with the person. And again, you can learn that. I think October or November, I'm going to do every three or 4 months, I do a breakdown of the letting go method. So I think I'm going to do that. Wayne wrote, the brain is a sophisticated receiver and processor that expresses our thoughts through our various organs. That makes the world beautiful. I'm Chinese. Sorry, the emoji thing's blocking. There we go. And it's early morning, 7:40. Wow, I have a lot of friends in China, and it is 7:50 a.m. I'm about to talk to one of my friends in China now. It's my first time here engaging. Nice energy exchange. Thanks so much for coming. I love the fact that you found us from China. That's awesome. I'm going to be in Beijing. I'm going to be in Hong Kong on September 17th and Beijing on the 21st. See some good friends. So do you speak to God with automatic writing? No, you don't. You're speaking with your own unconscious. I would say 99.9999999% of the time, people say they hear the voice of God or something are hallucinating. You can speak with some powerful archetypes in there, though, but you're speaking to just your unconscious. That's it. Yeah, and there's no channeling here, there's none of that. I think that's one, dangerous, and two, usually it's just people aren't actually channeling anything. If you believe in that sort of thing, they're just hallucinating. But no, you're not talking to God. I will say this though, Joanna, that the unconscious tends, when you're talking to nature's self and not the shadow or whatever, tends to align with traditional spiritual principles like kindness and compassion and love and forgiveness. It recommends that all the time. As a matter of fact, if this unconscious ever tells you to be vengeful or exploit others, I think you're actually not talking to nature's self. You're letting maybe the shadow take control. And the shadow's isn't there to rule you. The shadow's there to explain why you have these negative feelings. Now, you can use some of the shadow, like a little bit of fear, a little bit of anger. But again, you're playing with fire. So if you use the dark side, you take a little bit of it, right? It's not revenge, or if it's revenge, it's like, I'll show them revenge, like I'll prove them wrong. But 99% of your motivation is love for yourself. People get possessed by the dark side. 99% of their motivation, or 100% of their motivation, is like dark side motivation. And that you see that like in sports with Tanya Harding, right? The shadow took her over, and then she gets her boyfriend or whatever to hit Nancy Kerrigan in the leg with a lead pipe. That's shadow. She wanted to prove Nancy Kerrigan wrong and prove all of her doubters wrong. That can be healthy. That can motivate great performance. A little sip of the shadow, right? You go out there, you work a little harder, you train a little harder because of all the doubters. You're using a little bit of the fear of embarrassment, using some of the shadow, some of the dark side emotions. She let it take her over. You see this with people who get in business and create these fake companies. Elizabeth Holmes, you see it with Sam Bankman-Fried. They get dominated by their dark side. Peggy S., I'm asking, what do watermelons or elephant ears mean to me? It's a deep question. But as they come up, you'll get these crazy images. I'm sure you saw some of them as flipping through. I just thought I'd throw some in there just like for something to look at. But I never know what they're about. I have no idea. And half the time even now, I'll sit down, I'll get a crazy image. I'm like, this is BS. It's BS. But the image comes together and it means something. The knock on Jung is you could swap out an animal for a different animal and still have meaning, right? So that's the knock on Jung. If you do enough inner work, you realize that actually, no, that's not the case. In an individual's life, the elements in there are specific for that moment in time and talk to other elements in other visions and dreams. And you realize, no, you actually couldn't swap out the alligator for a dragon. It wouldn't work. It wouldn't make sense. Even if you try to link it together, it like breaks something somewhere else. But yeah, that's why you also don't want to do just one dream at a time, because maybe you start hallucinating and making up meanings, right? Potentially. Yeah, I was just making up an example. But even that example, why did I pick those specific examples? I don't think too much of it right now because I'm not in the middle of unconscious work. If I was doing unconscious work, I might write down what I just said and investigate it. I still could, because it might mean something. I should say this. Sometimes you think you have a vision that means something, and the unconscious will say, it doesn't mean anything. It's just brain vomit, right? Like the unconscious will tell you that. Nope, this doesn't mean anything. It'll also say, you think you have this like weird vision, and it will say, no, remember yesterday you were watching a snake documentary. That's why you had a vision of snakes. And you'll go, oh, it'll tell you that you forgot about the snakes. Sometimes it'll say, yeah, you had a snake image in your mind because you watched snakes yesterday, and I can use that. So the unconscious will use things you've seen throughout the day. Just because you went to the zoo yesterday and saw a tiger, and then you have a dream of a tiger, it doesn't mean that tiger is meaningless just because you saw the tiger yesterday. The unconscious could be using it. Okay. But it could be that you saw a tiger yesterday and you have a dream of a tiger just because you saw the tiger yesterday. You can ask the unconscious using automatic writing if it means something or if it's just the brain kind of regurgitating digesting what it saw the other day. Of course, Lana. I'll let go of emotions. Why can't I just tell her what I think? Am I not aware? So yeah, if you do the letting go program, the main key to that is thoughts are not powerful enough to deal with emotions. Emotions are the most powerful and primary things in your psyche, and we're a thought-based society. So we're always trying to change our thoughts to change our emotions. The big breakthrough I had 15, 20 years ago was, and somebody taught this to me, was to deal with emotions more than thoughts. I was already going down that path of dealing with emotions. But then there was a method that I learned, and letting go of emotions is far more powerful than trying to change your thoughts. Yeah, the slides will be posted at dillonfreed.com/recordings. I'll probably clean this up a little bit and then I'll send it out in the next few days. Do you work with one dream at a time? Typically, yeah, one dream at a time, but you might have nights where you have 1 or 2 dreams in a row or 3 dreams. I had a little system. It was like a memory technique to help me remember dreams. I could tell you that later. We don't have enough time now, but if I couldn't get to a pen or paper, this has to do with lucid dreaming. Sometimes I'd be lucid dreaming and I would incorporate some mnemonic or memory technique to help me recall the dream in the morning or elements of the dream. Or if it was a complex dream, I would do a few things to help me remember it. All right. It's close to 8 o'clock. I think we should probably wrap up. Unless there's one, I'll do one more question if there is one. Ask subconscious what, if anything, do items in our dreams mean? Yeah, that's right. Just ask them, ask the unconscious if it means something or if it doesn't. Sometimes it'll just tell you, like, this means nothing. It's just your brain remembered something that has no inherent meaning. And this gives you more confidence that you're actually dealing with an intelligence here. I've sometimes said the unconscious is almost like it's like an AI model, right? But personalized to you. Of course, Meryl, thank you so much for coming. I thought you said you don't work with one at a time. Okay, I thought you meant like when I'm analyzing a dream. I will work with that one dream. And then as you build up dreams and visions, they can start talking to each other. But typically, I will analyze a dream almost as a standalone. And then I can go back and see where it connects. Occasionally, it will bring in, remember that vision from a year ago. This is related to that. It'll tell you. And I'm going to publish a book, hopefully in the next year or 2. I'm trying to get all of this together. Can loved ones talk to us through nature self? I have had people talk, and I want to their deceased loved ones or their parent or something. But really what you're doing there, in my opinion, is you're not channeling the person. You just have so much information about somebody you love that you, in your unconscious, know what they would say to you. So yeah, you can access, like I've talked to my grandfather or grandmother. I know I'm not talking to them, but I know so much about them and I've had conversations with them, so I know what they'd say, if that makes sense. Oh, thanks, Janine. Thanks, Lynn. Thank you, everyone. Selena, Leah. When we upgrade our brains, both our conscious and subconscious mind become more efficient, just like, that's exactly right, like computer processing models, 100%. I'm definitely an updated version of my 20-year-old self in some ways, not in others. All right, everybody, I'm going to stop this recording and thank you again for coming. And keep in mind the next talk is on, it's not controversial at all, the bitch archetype and the asshole archetype. Should be fun. And thank you, Leo.